Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome to a new Snapshot video. This is Snapshot 20w51a where I have come out all the way to an ocean monument in a brand new creative test world so that I can introduce you to Minecraft's latest most adorable addition. That right there, let me take off the HUD so you guys can see a little bit better. That is an Axolotl, and it is one of 5 Axolotls that have been added to the game in this snapshot. They are wonderful little amphibious creatures that come in a variety of colors, can be bred, and can help you raid ocean monuments as well as tackle life underwater. And this one is just swimming around quite peacefully, but they have a bunch of pretty cool behaviors attached to them so far, as you can see from the fact that there are fish floating on the top of the surface here. We have a fish predator in the game now, basically. These things are really quite cool little creatures, and if you go into the creative inventory and search for mob eggs, usually in the miscellaneous category, you'll find them pretty close to the top of the alphabet because, of course, they begin with A. Axolotls now have spawn eggs. Not only that, but they have the rather adorable bucket of axolotl, because if you happen to find one of these critters in the wild, which you won't be able to do in snapshots, but you'll be able to do once they arrive, I think in Lush Caves, I believe is where they're going to be natively found. You can scoop them up in a bucket of water in much the same way as you can a fish. And if you haven't done this before, it's nice and simple. You just walk over to a fish, or swim over, probably more accurately, and you right-click on the fish with a full bucket of water. You'll get an achievement for that called Tactical Fishing, and it will also grab the fish in a bucket to be released basically anywhere you want it to be. Let's release this cod back into the wild. The cod doesn't really care all that much, apparently, but it's going to eventually find its way back into the water and swim away. You can do this with the axolotls as well. So let me see where that one went to so I can grab it. I did release a bunch of them into the water a little while ago, and as you can see, they come in a variety of colors. This one here, I think, is actually a more rare variant, although there are apparently 4 more common ones and a rare one. And from what I've seen, I think I've seen all 5 colors, but they are a bunch of different colors. Once I've scooped him up, though, of course, I can put him back down basically anywhere, and because I'm in creative, that one changes color, but I'm fairly certain, like the fish, there will be the same axolotl that you picked up in the bucket gets put back down when you place the bucket elsewhere. In order to get the attention of an axolotl in the wild, you'll probably want to have a tropical fish on you, because they become pretty skittish otherwise, and they will basically run away from you in much the same way foxes or cats do until you're holding their favorite food, at which point they will start to swim around you in kind of the same way that dolphins do. They're sort of looking for somebody to play with, and if we find another axolotl around here, you'll notice this one starts to follow me but loses interest if I get away a little bit too fast. So I'll try and do this at swimming pace so it can keep up, and as you can see, it is following me, even going so far as to follow me towards the ocean monument a little bit before it gets distracted by the other fish in the environment. But over there in the distance, I think I can see another axolotl or 2, so let's see if we can attract the attention of these 2 where there aren't so many fish in the deeper water over here. And yep, looks like they've both taken the bait. They've both found a person holding a tropical fish, and they're just swimming around. They will leave turtles alone. Of course, turtles are pretty peaceful and very much not their prey or their enemies. And of course, if they're interested in tropical fish, they must also be interested in tropical fish in a bucket. Not only that, oh, you'll see one over there in the distance actually attacking guardians, but wait, what is that? Is it playing dead? I think it is. The Guardians are ignoring it in their entirety because there it is. It came back to life. Okay, so we'll get onto that behavior in a little bit, but I just wanted to capture that as it happened because it's super cool to see them exhibiting that behavior. We'll play around with that in a little bit in a second. But now, let's go back to our friends over here, and there's a little baby one that I managed to spawn earlier because they can be bred using tropical fish. If tropical fish are their favorite food, it kind of stands to reason that that's also what you need to use to breed them. And so if we can get another one of the adult axolotls closer to us, hopefully we should be able to breed it with this one over here. So with all of the squid and fish around, keeping their attention is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but of course once you can feed 2 of them a tropical fish, they'll get the usual mating heart and start a bit of a mating dance. Right now they seem to be ignoring each other for the most part, but this little adorable axolotl is the result of breeding 2 of them together, and maybe once this one decides to stop killing fish, it'll come over here, take an interest in this one. They kind of look at each other lovingly for a little while, swim towards each other, and then freeze for a minute as though they're playing dead or as though they are on land, and eventually you'll see them breed and produce an offspring, which hasn't happened this time for some reason, but maybe we were a little bit late on the tropical fish and this one got kind of distracted. You know how it is. One of the other cool things about axolotls, and one of the behaviors I'm sure we will see them exhibiting when they're in Lush Caves, is that they are amphibious. They actually like to come up on land, much like the turtles that we saw swimming around earlier, though they are a lot slower on land than they are in the water. They become much more graceful when they are swimming around, kind of like penguins, I suppose. And breeding them on land seems to be possible as well, even if it might be a little bit less of a graceful process. It's kind of adorable when they get to the edge of a block. You'll sometimes see them like tilting themselves forward a little bit as they reach the edge of a block, as though they're trying to, you know, ease themselves back into the water. You'll see that one there is doing it right now. It kind of looks like it's burying itself in the sand, but then once they get back in the water, they'll be a lot happier. You will notice them start to take damage if they are out of water for 5 minutes. They tend to dry out a little bit, and so you'll probably want to make sure that they have a nice place to swim in if you plan on befriending these little critters and not ending up with them dying or anything. Now I'm going to swim out here to where these squid are. As you can see, there's a squid ink sac here, which kind of means, if we're this far away from the monument, that the axolotls have been attacking the squid. And if we can help one of them to attack, like if I spawn an axolotl around this squid and then I try and attack the squid while it does, let's see if I can get a couple of hits in. I'm not certain if this is going to happen in creative or not. It might only happen in survival, but apparently if you attack something that they're attacking, if you help them out in their attacks, then they will actually grant you certain status effects. Again, kind of similar to dolphins, they will give you a short regeneration buff, and they will also remove mining fatigue, which is why I've come out here to the ocean monument, because these guys are effectively going to be wolves, but for the water. They are going to be things that will help you raid an ocean monument and will even attack and kill guardians for you. So in creative mode, I've spawned in a bunch of pretty decent armor, the kind of stuff that I would normally, as an over-prepared kind of person, go into an ocean monument wearing. So I've got respiration on my helmet, depth strider on my boots, that kind of stuff. But I've got a tropical fish in my offhand instead of a shield today, because I think we're going to try and take on this ocean monument in survival mode with a team of 5 axolotls swimming alongside me. And I've got a tropical fish so that hopefully they can stay in line, because I've already tried this once, and if you are not holding a tropical fish, they tend to get a little bit distracted and they disappear into the monument or outside of the monument so that they can track down these guardians. So I'm going to put some doors here so that hopefully they don't repeat the same problem. The guardians can get in, so maybe the axolotls can. Let me see. Oh, yep, there's one already. It looks like that one survived out of all of them. Let me just quickly add in a couple of trapdoors here. We'll add a couple of trapdoors in over the top of the doors as well so that the guardians and axolotls can't escape. I'm going to swim over to this room. We're going to put myself in survival mode, and hopefully, since I'm holding a tropical fish, they will see me as a friend and they'll start to attack that guardian for me. And there we go. It looks like they are giving it a couple of nips, and there is the mining fatigue effect. So now if we start to participate in combat here, if we start helping the axolotls out, you can see them getting that regeneration effect. Hopefully, sooner or later, if we try and attack this one maybe, let's get a couple of hits in on this guardian. Oh no, I hit the axolotl by mistake. That was a problem. This is a little bit dicey here and there, I think, because they are just getting in the way a little bit. But if the axolotls stop near us and give us some of that regeneration, then that'll mean we can potentially get out of a tight spot a little bit sooner. What I would really like is for them to demonstrate this behavior where apparently they will... Oh, there goes one of them. Unfortunate. That one ended up taking a little bit too much damage, it seems like, because they are not always going to play dead when they get attacked. There we go. Let's see if we can take out this guardian with the help from our axolotl friends. There we go. Yes, okay, we took out that guardian. Now, I'm wondering if this one is going to give me any help with the mining fatigue. It doesn't look like they are. The mining fatigue has just slowly been ticking down this entire time. So occasionally, if you need help, they will give you a little bit of resistance to mining fatigue, and they'll also give you a little bit of regeneration if you need it. Maybe I need to take a little bit more damage. Perhaps that's what's stopping them. And if we swim on through here with our axolotl friends helping out, then the Elder Guardian is here, and we can take on one of these as well. So the effect might be a little bit difficult to reproduce, and it may only be an occasional thing. But according to the changelog, axolotls who you assist in combat will give you these occasional little regen buffs and stuff like that. So hopefully we can get that to happen at some point in this video. And at this point, having taken the fish out of my offhand, the axolotl seems to have completely disappeared, more or less. I can't really see where it ended up, so I think we might try and reproduce that effect under slightly more controlled conditions. But at least it gives the Guardians a few more targets when you're in here. If nothing else, they are a strategic advantage in that the Guardians won't always try and attack you. But yeah, it seems like right now they are a little bit fragile, so maybe they could do with a little bit of a health buff. Okay, in a slightly more controlled environment and with mining fatigue removed, let's try Axolotl versus Elder Guardian. So if I start putting a few more of these guys in the water, we get to see a few of the different colors here. We've got a brown one, we've got a pink one, a yellow, and this awesome multicolored one, which looks like it might not be the rare one after all. I'm waiting to see what kind of color the rare one ends up being, because looking at this, there's a whole bunch of them, but they are, largely speaking, all the same sort of colors. Now, if we end up taking the tropical fish out of my hand, hopefully these guys will start attacking the Elder Guardian, but maybe we can step in here and intervene. The Elder Guardian will probably give me mining fatigue in a second or two, but if I help out the Axolotls from being attacked by the Elder Guardian, then maybe it will end up giving us that regen buff that I was trying to get hold of. Here we go. Well, they are getting stuck in various blocks right now. That one seems to just be trying to get himself back into the tank. You'll see this one is trying to swim that way, but is mostly just kind of hanging out on the sand. And I unfortunately didn't get any of this regen buff they're talking about, so it seems to be kind of difficult to produce right now. Personally, I'm just enjoying their movement right now, though, because when they're at rest, they just kind of float along, vibing a little bit, just kind of like minding their own. And then when they start really going for it and swimming, they are pretty graceful, and they seem to be able to just get out of the water and onto land whenever they want to. And whatever this rare variety of axolotl is, it sure does seem to be rare, because I have been spamming spawn eggs and buckets of axolotls in here, and all I'm getting is 4 variants. We have the brown one, the yellow one, the pink one, and the white one that's got that kind of gradient pattern along its back, which I think is my favorite of all of them. They're still really, really pretty, but that kind of like purple through pink gradient with the blue is a really, really nice design. Now let's spawn a few more in here. Let's pack this tank absolutely full of axolotls, and let's see if we can get that rare one to spawn. There are a few other changes that have come up in this snapshot, but no new features, more just refinements to existing ones. In this case, we've got a couple of refinements to Skulk Sensors, which are really going to change how they operate, and we can also assume that this is going to change how the Warden will operate when it is eventually introduced as well. Now, previously, there was a Skulk Sensor frequency, and Skulk Sensors could detect when you started eating some food. That is no longer the case. You can finish eating some food and the Skulk Sensors will detect that, but they won't detect you starting to eat, in the same way that they will not detect you starting to mine a block, but they will detect the block breaking. Mojang says this is basically for consistency, because, you know, you can stop eating some food and it's not like the food disappears or anything. Basically, finishing the food and using the item is what's going to cause the vibration to be sensed. Maybe it's just like a massive burp that you give out at the end or something like that. And in discussions I've had with other Minecraft players, we all seem to agree this basically made sense, because most of the time, if you're going to be eating, you're going to be eating all the way, and you don't necessarily need a Skulk Sensor to detect when you start and stop eating. That's kind of like too granular a way of implementing this. So I think that's probably a good thing. If you wanted to detect somebody eating, they're probably going to finish what they're eating in the first place, right? So that makes a lot of sense. Next up, though, we have some changes with wool blocks. And now, of course, wool was going to be used for wool occlusion and still is. However, there are a few changes to the way wool now behaves when interacting with other things. For example, when you throw a block onto the ground near Skulk Sensors, they can detect it. They will notice that basically the same as they notice any other vibration, like a player landing nearby or something like that. Wool is now an exception to that, so if you throw a wool block on the ground, it will not make any noise, and likewise picking a wool block up doesn't make any noise, but I don't think picking a regular block up made any noise to Skulk Sensors either. Let's try that. No, okay, so you don't notice that pick up sound. It's just really for the player. It's not like a vibration that the Skulk Sensors will detect. However, Skulk Sensors will now no longer detect player footsteps if you are walking on wool either, and presumably wool occlusion still takes effect, so that if you place a block and remove a block behind wool, yeah, that's basically all the same. But the fact that you can now tiptoe around Skulk Sensors on wool blocks is really going to balance them better in the context of the game, I think, because if you suspect Skulk Sensors are going to be around, you can potentially try and parkour your way through your enemy's base without the Skulk Sensors detecting you. As soon as you manage to hit the floor is lava and you end up getting sensed by the sensors. I think this is going to add a lot of depth to Skulk Sensor mechanics because it allows players to do something that doesn't just involve constantly sneaking around and making sure you have the shift button held down. Requires a little bit less manual dexterity as well for those players who need to have assistance with stuff like that. It means that you don't have to worry about being tripped up by Skulk Sensors every single time. Now that could also, in theory, apply to the Warden as well, and while the Warden isn't implemented in the game yet, and we don't know if it's going to work exactly the same, one can assume that, like the Skulk Sensors, it's going to be able to detect you when you finish eating something or whatever sound you happen to make. And so I think it's going to be really cool if you enter the Deep Dark carrying a couple of stacks of wool blocks, and ultimately what you end up doing is finding your way around using wool. Now, it's also worth noting there is a weird issue with this that comes from basically whether or not you are over onto the next block in terms of your player position. So right now, if you take a look at where I am, if I look directly down, I'm on top of this grass block in terms of where my player position is, but I'm standing on top of the wool block in terms of the height, right? Now, right on this very edge of the wool block, basically I've held shift and gone as far over as I can without falling off the block itself. If I now jump up and down, the Skulk Sensors detect that because technically the game thinks I'm standing on top of this grass block, when actually, vertically speaking, I'm standing on top of the wool. It still shows up as a vibration. So you're going to want to stay very close to the center of these blocks where you possibly can. Otherwise, if you land too close to the edge, even if you are still on the wool block, you risk being sensed by Skulk Sensors. So that is something to bear in mind, but maybe something that we will see a little bit of a shift around. It's the same way that sometimes if you land on a slime block from a great height, if you land on the edge of the slime block, you can still potentially take fall damage, right? It's the same kind of principle. And so maybe that's something that they can refine about these. Maybe there is an update to player position that will allow it to detect whether you are, technically speaking, because it's raised up from the ground, standing on the wool block and not the grass block in situations like this. There are a few other changes to Skulk Sensors in terms of the frequency chart, what frequencies they output when they detect certain sounds and which sounds enable those frequencies to occur, but that is something that potentially we will see shifting around based on player feedback, and I'm not going to cover all of the changes here because I didn't cover absolutely everything. One last very important change to Skulk Sensors is, despite the fact that we have a weapon against them in the form of walking around on wool blocks to avoid detection, Skulk Sensors can now avoid detection from players because, of course, when you create a vibration near them, they will make that kind of rippling sound that they have, and now if a waterlogged Skulk Sensor detects you, it will detect you without making sound. And obviously, all you need to do is trap the Skulk Sensor in a box that's going to keep the water in, and any redstone signal it outputs will be done so silently. And that could be useful for player bases, or it could be terrifying for traps, because you will not know how you've tripped something, you will just know that you have. So walk on eggshells, or rather walk on wool, to avoid detection by these silent Skulk Sensors. One last thing I wanted to cover while we're here in this creative test world is that the game rule has been added for players sleeping. So if we check out players sleeping percentage, you can now set a value between 0 and 100, and that is the percentage of players required to sleep in order to skip the night. Normally this is done with plugins or datapacks that allow for multiplayer sleeping on multiplayer servers and vote sleeping and that kind of stuff. So now you can actually set this through a game rule in-game instead of having to worry too much about setting up data packs for it. Basically, if you set to 0, that requires basically none of the other players on a server to be sleeping. One player sleeps, it will skip the night. It's set to 100 by default, meaning that 100% of players will have to be sleeping in order to skip through the night, meaning that everybody has to be in their beds. Obviously, setting it to 50, if you had a server with 4 players playing, 2 of them could sleep while 2 of them were awake, and that would still skip through the night. Apparently, if you set it to above 100, if you set it to, say, like 110%, you cannot skip the night at all, which is an interesting compromise and might end up being used for some very interesting effects on challenge servers, but for the most part, I think it's going to be the case that people will set that to 0 so that anybody on a server can skip through the night for everybody else on the server, regardless of who is sleeping and who isn't. Well, I have filled the water over here with axolotls aplenty, and they are now absolutely decimating the fish population, but I still cannot find the rare one. And I think we did end up seeing a full purple axolotl that was kind of like a darker variation of the pink one during their initial announcement at Minecraft Live, but for the life of me, I cannot spawn one in, and I'm not entirely certain about the commands required to do so, so I'm going to leave it for now. But that has been a fun little look at axolotls, and they are super colorful. I really enjoy seeing them swimming around in the ocean here, and while you're probably not going to encounter this many in Lush Caves, breed up enough of them, and who knows, your own personal army of axolotls might be taking over an ocean monument very, very quickly. Just for fun, before we go, I thought I would see what happens if I hold tropical fish in my hand, and yep, it looks like we have... Oh! Is that it? Is that it right there? I think that is it. I think we may have found it. That one there is a little bit more blue than all of the others, and I think that right there is our rare axolotl. Awesome. It must have escaped my attention in the crush, and as you can see, there are a lot of them. I thought just for fun I would hold some tropical fish in both hands, and as you can see, the axolotls are absolutely swarming me, but that one there with the slightly bluer skin and the purple tail is definitely the rare one, because there is one of those in, I don't know how many I've spawned around here, but it is a whole lot. Well, folks, that is all I wanted to cover in this episode, but thank you so much for checking out this first look at axolotls with me. I'm sure you guys have seen a few more videos on the subject, and I cannot wait to see the lush caves that these are eventually going to spawn in. But for now, that's going to be it from me. Thank you so much for watching this video. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.